I still remember the way Judge Halvorsen leaned forward that afternoon, his lips twitching into a smirk just before slamming the gavel. 3 years in juvenile detention, he said, voice firm and dismissive, next case. My nephew, 17-year-old Kalen, stood frozen, jaw clenched, eyes locked on the judge. There was no outburst, no last word. Just a quiet disbelief. The courtroom, full of murmurs and sideways glances, fell still. Even the bailiff looked uncomfortable. What was supposed to be a routine hearing for a first-time offense, simple trespassing at an abandoned warehouse, had just turned into a harsh sentence that made no sense. As Kalen was led out in handcuffs, I caught a glimpse of Judge Halvorsen's face. That smirk, it wasn't just casual. It was smug. I knew something wasn't right. But I didn't know that within a week, the entire city would know why. After the hearing, I tried speaking to Kalen's public defender, but she was already shoving papers into a file, shaking her head. Look, I agree it was excessive, she whispered, glancing toward the security guard near the exit. But Halvorsen's known for this. Nobody crosses him. Not unless they want their career shredded. I followed her out into the hallway. You mean this happens often? She hesitated, then leaned in. Word is, he's got connections. People who pay to make sure their kids stay clean while others take the hit. That didn't sit right with me. I spent the rest of the day making calls, digging through court records, even pulled a few favors from friends who owed me from my old reporter days. Halvorsen's sentencing history showed a pattern, harsh punishment for kids from certain neighborhoods, while others got off with warnings or community service. It was a machine, and my nephew had just been fed into it. But everything changed the next morning. I was sipping burnt coffee at my kitchen table when my phone buzzed. Unknown number, check your inbox. You didn't hear it from me. Attached were 6 photos. Judge Halvorsen. In a hotel bar. Laughing with a man in a designer suit. And then, clear as day, an envelope thick with cash changing hands. I zoomed in on the photos, one by one, barely breathing. The judge wasn't just near the envelope, he was reaching for it, sliding it into his briefcase like it was routine. The timestamp? 2 weeks before Kalen's sentencing. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Whoever sent this wasn't playing games, these were high-resolution, professionally taken images. Somebody wanted Halvorsen exposed, and they chose me to do it. But why? I replied to the number, who are you? No answer. Just a gray, delivered checkmark that never turned blue. I copied the images, backed them up to 3 different drives, and locked the originals in a password-protected folder. Then I made the first of many calls, to a friend of mine at the Ledger, the city's most respected independent news outlet. Micah, I said, I've got something big. Judge Halvorsen. Bribes. Photos. And a teenager he sentenced for no good reason. There was a long pause on the other end. Then Micah exhaled sharply. Bring them in. Now. And don't talk to anyone else. By the time I reached the Ledger's office, the photos had already started circulating, anonymously posted on 3 burner social media accounts. Halvorsen's face was everywhere. And the smirk that once said, "You can't touch me," was about to cost him everything. By noon, the courthouse was a circus. Reporters flooded the steps, microphones in hand. Protesters lined the sidewalk with signs reading, "Justice for all teens," and, "Who paid the judge?" Officers tried to manage the crowd, but the mood was shifting fast, from outrage to fury. Judge Halvorsen didn't show up to the bench that morning. His clerk came out and announced that all hearings were postponed until further notice. Micah called me 30 minutes later. He's gone dark, he said. No press statements. No comments. And get this, someone wiped his judicial profile page from the official court site. It's like he's trying to vanish. But it was too late for that. The Ledger had already dropped the story, exclusive, judge caught on camera accepting bribe before harsh teen sentencing. Within the hour, every major outlet picked it up. News stations, online blogs, even national platforms. The photos were everywhere, cropped, analyzed, and side by side with a transcript of Kalen's courtroom hearing. People were putting the pieces together on their own. And they didn't like what they were seeing. That evening, Kalen called me from detention. His voice was low, cautious. "Tia," he said, "somebody told me guards are acting weird. Like they know something's coming. You think they're gonna let me out?" I gripped the phone tighter. "We're not stopping until they do." But what I didn't know yet, was that Halvorsen wasn't the only one involved. There were more envelopes. And more names. The next tip came through 2 days later. An unmarked envelope was slipped under Micah's office door. No return address, no note, just a flash drive. Inside, dozens of scanned documents, text message screenshots, and bank transaction logs tied to multiple courthouse officials. At least 3 judges. 2 prosecutors. And a well-known criminal defense attorney who had built his entire reputation on miracle acquittals. They weren't just taking bribes, they were rotating sentences to balance the books. One kid got off easy so another one could be buried. The attorney funneled cash from wealthy clients trying to clean up their kids' records, and the judges made it happen, with a wink, a nod, and sometimes a smirk. Halvorsen was just the most careless. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Names I recognized. People who sat on justice panels. Advocated for fairness. Lectured at law schools. One particular document made my stomach turn, a list of juvenile cases flagged as flexible, including Kalen's. Next to it, a margin note, send to Halvorsen, he won't ask questions. I showed it to Micah. He rubbed his eyes and shook his head. "This isn't corruption," he said. "This is organized trafficking through the justice system. They've been selling freedom like real estate." By that evening, the city's legal structure was imploding. The governor called for an emergency investigation. The courthouse locked its doors. And Kalen's case? It was quietly moved to rear view. But Halvorsen still hadn't been seen. And the person leaking these files? They were just getting started. Late that night, I received another message, this time from a different number. No words. Just a video clip. I played it. Grainy footage from what looked like a hotel hallway. A man in a hoodie, face obscured by the camera angle, approached a hotel room door. He slipped a thick envelope under it. Then he turned back to the camera, just briefly, and even though his hoodie hid most of his face, I caught a glimpse of something familiar. It was Judge Halvorsen's clerk, the same man who had announced the court closures just hours earlier. I sat frozen, replaying the moment. Was the clerk in on it? Delivering payouts? Or was someone blackmailing him? The clip ended with a close-up of the room number, 1409. I looked it up, one of the most expensive suites in the upscale Marlowe Hotel downtown. Micah texted me seconds later, "We need to talk. Something big just dropped." I rushed back to the Ledger office. He had already pulled up public records. The room had been booked the night of Kalen's sentencing, by a private foundation, one known for backing certain judicial campaigns. "This isn't just judges helping each other," Micah said, voice tight. "This is funded. Somebody's bankrolling the whole system." And then he showed me the kicker. A financial ledger, part of the new leak, detailing payouts to court officials. Next to Halvorsen's name was a 5-digit figure. Next to the clerk's name, nearly double. And next to the name of a certain city councilwoman. 6 figures. We were no longer chasing one corrupt judge. We were staring at a network. The deeper we dug, the clearer it became, this wasn't about one bad apple. It was a web. A machine. We uncovered a shell foundation called the Sable Reform Initiative, a name that sounded noble enough for grant requests and political panels. But behind the glossy public image, it was little more than a laundering front. The foundation funneled money through speaking fees, honorariums, campaign donations, and consulting contracts. From there, it landed in the pockets of judges, prosecutors, clerks, and even a few school officials who flagged teens early for disciplinary concerns. The more trouble a kid appeared to be, the more valuable their case became to the system. The harsher the sentence, the bigger the payout. And then we found it, an internal memo. Dated 6 months ago. Priority: target low-visibility defendants with limited legal support. Expedite cases with Judge Halvorsen or Judge M, name redacted. Envelopes to be delivered post-sentencing by courier, not clerk. No communication via personal phones. Micah stared at the screen. They were literally writing this stuff down. Like it was policy. We went live with the story that night. Front page. Full spread. Leaked documents and video footage embedded for public review. And in less than 24 hours, the city exploded. The courthouse was swarmed by demonstrators. The mayor was forced into a press conference. And Judge Halvorsen? A federal warrant was issued for his arrest. Still no sign of him. But someone knew where he was. Because that same night, I received one final message, a blurry photo. Halvorsen. Somewhere on a private jet. Boarding stairs. Passport in hand. The caption read, "Clock's ticking." The photo didn't come with metadata, but Micah had connections, deep ones. He ran the image through flight tracker databases and cross-referenced tail numbers on private charters. Within hours, we had a hit. Flight 7YJX. Departed from a private airfield outside the city. Destination, Nassau, Bahamas. Halvorsen was fleeing. By sunrise, federal agents had descended on the airfield, seizing fuel logs, flight manifests, and surveillance footage. But they were always one step behind. Micah and I met with a U.S. Marshal assigned to the manhunt. She didn't mince words. "Your story forced this into the open," she said, eyes cold and steady. "But this guy had a head start, and resources. He's not traveling alone." She handed us a printed document, a list of names. Recognizable ones. Halvorsen's top donors. Board members of the Sable Reform Initiative. One sitting federal judge, flagged but not yet indicted. "He's not just running," the marshal continued. "He's being protected." Meanwhile, public pressure exploded. Parents whose kids had been sentenced by Halvorsen were demanding retrials. Defense attorneys filed motions en masse. And Kalin? He was quietly released from detention pending full dismissal. The moment he stepped out, cameras swarmed. But all he said was, "I wasn't the first. Just the first who got lucky." Micah's phone buzzed again. New footage. Security cam. Halvorsen in a beach resort bar, dressed down, talking with two men in suits. One of them, according to facial recognition, was a former intelligence contractor turned corporate advisor. We were no longer chasing a corrupt judge. We were staring at the underbelly of an entire justice for sale industry. And someone didn't want it torn open. The pressure reached a boiling point within days. With the leaked footage of Halvorsen now circulating globally, pressure mounted on international agencies. Bahamian officials, under the watch of both U.S. and local media, detained him at a luxury villa, one rented under a fake corporation linked to Sable Reform's offshore branch. When U.S. Marshals flew him back in cuffs, the crowd outside the federal courthouse was the largest the city had ever seen. He didn't smirk this time. Halvorsen was indicted on multiple counts: bribery, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and violating public trust. But he wasn't alone in the courtroom. 7 others were arrested within the same week. 2 judges. 3 prosecutors. 1 school official. And the Sable Reform Foundation's executive director, who had once been praised for youth justice innovation. Micah's exposé won awards. I was offered interviews, podcasts, panel appearances, but I declined most of them. This wasn't about Spotlight. It was about Kaylin. And the hundreds of other kids who never got a second chance. A special commission was formed to re-examine every juvenile case sentenced by Halvorsen and his associates. By year's end, dozens of young people were released, their records expunged. One of them, a shy 15-year-old named Marcus, hugged his mom outside the courthouse and said, "I thought no one was watching." They were. Eventually. As for Kaylin, he enrolled in a criminal justice program. Quiet, focused, determined. "I want to fix what they broke," he told me. From the inside. The system hadn't just failed. It had sold itself. But this time, someone had followed the money all the way to the gavel. And exposed what lay beneath the robe.